I was by myself at home a few years ago, and a really bad storm hit. I lived alone in a smaller house in the suburbs. It was probably about 8 p.m. when it started raining. Just before sunset, I had noticed that the clouds were pretty dark, and it seemed that a storm was brewing. The wind also picked up, and just after sunset, it started raining. Things picked up quite a bit, and I remember that there was a severe thunderstorm warning in my area as well. I was just staying inside and having a normal night, other than hearing the thunder outside occasionally. But about 20 or 30 minutes into the storm, the power suddenly went out. My TV shut off, the lights went out, and it became pitch black. Everything went silent as well. Now I could only hear the sound of the falling rain outside and the thunder. It was not that uncommon for the power to go out in a really bad storm. It had happened a couple of times over the years that I had lived there. Usually it would not be out for too long, maybe a couple of hours at most. I went on my phone for a while because I couldn't do much else. Then I went over to the front window and looked out, just watching the storm. The rain was still coming down very heavy. I could see my entire front yard and then parts of the street and a couple of neighbors' houses. As I sat there looking out the front window for a while, I noticed somebody walking down the street. This was odd because there was no sidewalk on my street, but it was also weird to see somebody out walking in such a thunderstorm. The person was wearing a black rain jacket and appeared to be a man, but I couldn't see very well. He walked down the street in front of my house, and then I left the window and sat back down on the couch. For probably about the next 10 minutes, I was just on my phone and sitting on the couch in the living room. But then, I remember it kind of sounded like somebody was trying to open the back door to my house. It instantly made me a little bit nervous, but I quickly thought that possibly it was just the sound of something else. I mean, the storm was sort of loud. Maybe something got blown into the back door or something. I couldn't hear that well, but with the power being out, I did hear things from outside much better. So I walked around slowly to the back end of the house. That's where my kitchen was, and I looked out of a back window. Because my house was so dark, I had much better visibility looking out the back. When I did, I looked near the door but saw nothing. This made me feel better until I looked around the rest of the yard. When I did, I noticed that the same man who I had seen walking down the street was back there. My backyard was not very big. The man was at the far side near the fence and walking towards the corner of the yard. It appeared as though he might walk into my next door neighbor's backyard. I had no idea who this guy was or what he was doing, and it was still pouring rain out. I thought that the man might look over and see me in the window, so I moved away from it and I went back towards my living room. I didn't really know what to do about this situation. I stayed in the living room for maybe the next 20 to 30 minutes. Then I heard a knocking sound coming from the back door to my house. It was really surprising to me. I was sure that the man in the backyard had been leaving, but I knew that this had to be him. The knocking was very loud and startling. I got up and walked back to look to the window, but when I got there, nobody was at the door. I looked out of a back window and all around my yard. However, I did not see anybody. I kept looking for like 10 minutes, but never saw anything. I went back into the living room after that. There were no more knocks or strange noises. Less than an hour later, the storm stopped and my power was restored. I kept an eye out back for the rest of the night though, but didn't see the guy again. This took place last summer. I was at home by myself one evening. I live with my husband, but he was at a sports game with one of his friends, and I knew that he would be gone until much later. It was a normal night, and probably about 9 p.m. or so. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the power went out. Everything went black, and I found this to be really strange. It was not storming outside, so I didn't know why this would happen. I knew that we had paid the electric bill like always, so at that point, I went on my phone and onto the app of our electric company that we have. I looked to see if there were any reported power outages in the area. Sometimes, if there are, it will say the cause of it, and it will also say when the power should be restored. so when I logged onto the app, I did not see any information about it. I was trying to figure it out on there for a few minutes, but did not have any luck. As I was doing this, I then heard the sound of glass breaking coming from the back of my house. It was very loud and alarming, especially because everything was so quiet and dark. I could only see from the light on my phone, and I got up and used it to guide my way to the back side of the house. When I got closer, I heard some noises coming from near the back door area. When I finally got within view of the back door, I suddenly stopped. I saw that the window to the back door was smashed, and an arm was reaching its way inside. Somebody was right outside of the door. I couldn't see who it was, but it really freaked me out, and I instantly turned in the other direction. I ran away and went as fast as I could to the bedroom. It was hard to see, but I was able to make it there. When I got inside of the bedroom, I quickly closed the door behind me and then locked it. Then I went all the way into the bedroom closet and hid inside. When I got there, I called the police on my phone. I said how somebody had broken into my house, and because of how quiet it was, I heard the back door open and the guy walk in. I did not know who it was or what he looked like, but I gave the police as much information as I could. The thing that really mattered was that there were officers on their way to my house. So I heard the guy walking around inside for a few moments, but when I got off the phone with the police, I didn't really hear him anymore. I listened closely, but heard nothing. I wasn't really sure what was going on. Still, I didn't dare move or make a sound, and I remained hidden inside of the bedroom closet. I was afraid that any second I would either hear footsteps outside of the door or hear the door starting to turn. If this guy broke the back door window to get in, who knows what he would do? There was probably a way that he could break down the bedroom door despite it being locked. As time went by though, I still didn't hear anything. Within 10 minutes, the police had arrived. They made their way into the house through the back door. Then they searched the entire house, and when they made it to the bedroom, I finally left. However, the police never found the man. The window was still smashed to the back door, and the back door was also left open, but the guy was gone. The police even searched around the neighborhood a little bit, but whoever had broken in had left and was nowhere in sight. And inside the house, everything remained in place. Nothing was stolen or anything. But the police found that the power lines had been cut, probably by the man who broke in. Why he did this, I don't know. I'm guessing it wasn't an accident. I called my husband and he came home. The police then left after getting information about the incident. Since this has happened, we got the window replaced and also installed security cameras. Nothing else suspicious has happened though. I live by myself in an apartment. I have a one-bedroom place on the second floor of my building. I've lived here now for about 2 years. The creepiest thing to ever happen took place just a couple of months ago. I had gotten home from work several hours earlier. After making some food and eating, I was relaxing on the couch and watching some TV. My living room is at the back end of the apartment, and the front half is mostly the kitchen. That's also where the front door is. It was sometime at night. I don't recall exactly what time, but it was dark outside. Then, suddenly, everything went dark. The power had gone out. It was really strange, and I didn't know why this had happened. I got up and looked out of the window, and it wasn't even raining. I wasn't really sure why the power had gone out. The only time it had gone out before was during a really bad storm, and that had only happened just once. I did not even own a flashlight, so I had to use the one on my phone. I walked over to the small closet that has the fuses and stuff. However, I had no idea what I was doing, so I just turned around and left. I knew that I wasn't overloading any of the outlets or anything. I figured that something must have happened with the power in the area. I went out onto my balcony, and I looked around and noticed that lights in other people's units appeared to be off as well. The whole building must have lost power. Why, though, I didn't know. So I went back over to the couch and sat down. I went on YouTube on my phone and started watching some videos there. Suddenly, though, I heard this knock on the front door of my apartment. It was not a very loud knocking noise, but pretty quiet. I paused the video and looked over to the door. I didn't know who it could possibly be. I was going to get up and check, but following the knocking sounds, there was this laughter. It was the sound of a man laughing in the creepiest way possible. When I heard it, I stopped and no longer wanted to get up and see who was there. After a few seconds of nothing, the man knocked once more and then laughed again. I ignored it. I really didn't know what was going on. But after the second knock followed by the laughter, I didn't hear anything else. I think that the guy must have walked away after that. Things were quiet, and I sat on my couch and went back to watching YouTube. I tried to forget about the whole thing, but a while later, the man returned. There was once again a slow knocking on the door, followed by a very creepy and unsettling laughter. This time, I got up and decided that I would actually see who was there. As creeped out as I was also curious as to who was doing this and why. My eyes had adjusted pretty well to the darkness, but it was still extremely hard to see. I used my phone to guide my way towards the front door. When I got there, I looked out of the peephole. I noticed that the backup lights had gone on in the hallway. When the power went out, there were these other lights in the hallway that would turn on, but nobody was at my door. I then opened up my front door and looked down the hallway. I took a couple of steps outside, and when I did, I saw that there was a man standing about 50 feet away, facing the other direction and walking. He was a larger man who I did not recognize. When I opened the door and looked out to him, he turned around and saw me. Then he instantly began sprinting in my direction. The man ran all the way to my door and then knocked on it again. This time, he laughed an exaggerated loud laugh and then finally left. I stopped hearing any more knocking after that. About an hour later, the power came back on. The guy luckily didn't return. The next day, I was on the internet portal site of the apartment complex. I saw on there that several residents complained about the strange knocking and laughter. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who had dealt with this guy. However, nobody ever seemed to figure out who he was or how he got inside the building. This happened back when I was a child. I think I was 9 years old if I'm remembering correctly. One night during the summertime, I was sleeping in my bedroom, which I had all to myself. However, I was awoken in the night because there was a big thunderstorm going on. I remember that it was something like 2 o'clock in the morning. I was a little bit scared of big storms at that age, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to fall back asleep right away. So I got out of bed and turned the light on. Then I got back into bed and I got my Nintendo DS from my bedside table. I turned it on, and that's about when the lights suddenly turned off and I realized that we had lost power. My digital clock turned off as well, and everything got really quiet. I could just hear the rain pouring outside and the rest of the storm. I then went underneath my covers and started playing some games on my DS. My plan was to just play until I finally got sleepy again, or it stopped storming. I knew that my parents and siblings were all asleep, and I didn't want to wake anybody up. So I hoped that the power would come back on soon, but luckily my DS had a good battery life. I was playing for quite a while, and I was hearing the storm going on in the background. At one point, it sounded like the storm was lightening up, so I wanted to look out of the window and see for myself. I lifted up the blanket that I was hiding under and looked over to the window. When I did, I was surprised to see that there was some woman standing there. I did not know who she was. My window looked out to the backyard, and this woman was standing right there and looking at me. I quickly covered myself back up with the blanket. I had no idea where she came from or how long she had been standing there. I don't have a great memory of what she looked like. I just know that seeing her really scared me. When I was under the blanket on my bed, I was too scared to get up and leave. I just stayed there. After a short time, I heard the woman say something, but couldn't make it out. Then, there was a slight knock on my window. I ignored it. I was really too scared to move. After a few minutes, though, I didn't hear anything more, so I gathered up some courage and looked again. When I did, not only was the woman still standing there, but she was staring right at me. I quickly got up this time and ran away. I left my bedroom and went down the hallway to my parents' room. Then I woke them up and told them what had happened. By the time my parents made it back to my bedroom, the woman was gone. My dad went outside and searched the yard, but said that she must have left. Luckily, the power came back on a short time later and the storm ended. This remains one of the scariest moments of my life. I never found out who the woman was or what she was doing there. I mean, it's pretty creepy to stare into a kid's bedroom during a thunderstorm in the middle of the night. I'm just glad that she never returned. A few weeks ago, I was at home with my wife. We had gone for a walk around the neighborhood, which we often do after getting home from work. During the walk, we took note of the dark skies approaching, and in the last part when we got back to our street, it started to sprinkle and we quickly got inside. Then, after getting inside the house, I started to prepare dinner. I was cooking a meat and pasta dish, and just beginning when it really started storming. Quickly, there was pouring rain and loud thunder, and probably within 5 minutes of this big storm hitting us, the power suddenly went out. I had to stop and quickly put everything away. I could not cook without the power, and I also couldn't see anything in the dark. We went around the house and found a couple of lanterns to use for some light. Then we checked the weather radar on our phones. The storm did not seem like it would be staying around for too long, which was good. I was hoping that it would blow over soon, but in the meantime, it was pretty nasty out there. I remember that a short time later, there was this really loud banging at the front door. It took us both by surprise of just how loud it was. I went over to see who was there. When I looked out of the front window, I saw that there were 3 large men standing there. I watched as one of them started banging on the door loudly again. I moved out of sight from the window in case they could see me. I did not know who these men were or what they wanted, but based on the way they were pounding on the door, I didn't have an interest in finding out. I was hoping that they would just go away. I stood in a location where I could sort of see them from the window where I was, but I didn't think they would be able to see me. After the men were at our door for about a minute, I saw 2 of the men disperse in different directions. One went towards the side of my house, and the other went towards the window that I was looking towards. I quickly moved away from that window. I went over and found my wife near the kitchen. I told her what was going on, and she suggested that we call the police. Moments later, I heard a loud banging coming from the side door, which was just about 15 feet away from us. I called the police, and there was now a banging at the side door, front door, and a knocking on the window, and this was all taking place at once. Then, suddenly, all the lights in our house came back on. The power was restored. When this happened, the 3 men all started sprinting away. They ran off of our property and into the rain. I informed the police of this, and the storm lightened up a bit but was still going on. After that, the men did not return. It was very strange to say the least.